Going on, everybody? RogersBase here. Hello and welcome to my live reaction to One Piece manga chapter 1172. Now, obviously, as you can see, I am still in Chicago. I was here for Frosty Faustings. I had a great time. If you were there, you said hello, you know who you are. Thank you very much for coming up. That was just such a fun event, getting to see so many different friends and play so many fighting games. But of course, you already know, despite the fact that it's a busy weekend, I got to sit down. I got to do my live reaction to the new One Piece manga chapter. Now, I also want to address right at the very beginning of this stream that apparently there's not going to be a break next week either. And I will also be out of town next week because Reagan's sister is getting married. So we're actually going to be in Vegas for her wedding. So I think I'll have another out of town reaction to the next manga chapter as well. And then after that, I think we should be good until like late spring. I think we're going to be fine. Otherwise, I don't think I'm really traveling all that much. Fingers crossed. I don't want to travel all that much, but either way, hello and welcome everybody. Hope you're all having a lovely morning. I love that little owl gift. I don't know what that was. I'm sure people on the VOD have no idea what I'm talking about, but there was a little owl gift that popped up. That was very cute. Hello and welcome everyone. Let's get started. Also, for all the people listening on audio, you're probably like, what a weird way to start this stream. But either way, let's get started. One Piece 1172. Okay, this one is titled The Elbaf I Dreamed Of, and we have Bon Clay on the front cover doing his makeup with the little geese with the straw hat there, and another little goose with a crown on it. That's supposed to be like Luffy and Vivi. It says, reader request, swans helping themselves to Bon Clay's makeup. Oh, the other one's got the little tufts on his head. That's cute. You got Bon Clay in the front. This is very, very funny. Well, all right, we got to get into the chapter because obviously Bon Clay's not showing up at Elbaf. As cool as that would be, Bon Clay's not showing up anytime soon. So, all right, let me see this. Click this down over here. Make sure everything's looking good. Boom. Okay, we are. And let me click 1172. Okay, so we're on an elevator. This is where we left off, going up to the upper level in Elbaf. This is the new giant pirates down from the bottom. So here we go. Our foes, number 3, and their mission is to kidnap 10 giant children. And you can see the elevator still going up the chains. They mean to take the children to the Holy Land and use them as hostages to coerce the warriors of Elbaf into being their battle slaves. And you can see in Harudin's palm of his hand, you got Gaban and Chopper. How can a mere trio of humans run rampant over both the giant pirates and Mr. Ya, which is always so funny to me that they keep calling him Mr. Ya when all of us know him as Gaban. But of course, that's what they know him as. What would they call him? And you can see there's just a little bit of silence. And then, I'm sorry. I failed you, plain and simple. You say children, but these are giant children, right? So this is Sanji talking. How are 3 humans our size going to even carry these giant kids? Now, Zoro, complete silence. He's like, Sanji, why are you being stupid? You've seen me carry buildings and giant dumbbells. What do you mean? But Gaban very quickly starts to explain himself, saying the woman of the trio, so Gunko, has a strange power using arrows. It seems that wherever these arrows point, the children are helpless to resist. They are walking ceaselessly towards the port in the western village. If they get to the boat, they can lose us at sea, and then simply it's all over. That's the true end point of the situation. And you've got a classic little autograph with the ship over on the sea, the line of the kids walking on over towards it in silhouette, and picking up really where we left off prior to that flashback. It's crazy when you think about how little has actually happened in real time over the course of the last like year and a half, right? Like we experienced so much as One Piece fans. We have been feasting as One Piece fans with all the stuff with God Valley and Rocks and Shakuyaku and everything that's happened since Loki, everything that's happened in the flashback. And then here we are, and it's just like, okay, what's going on? All right, if that's all, then why can we not simply take back the children? One of the 3 is a man named Summers, and I know him, unfortunately. So again, the new giant pirates there. A man with the powers of the thorn fruit. As a thorn man, he makes free use of vicious, spiky vines. He can make them invisible too, and has wrapped them around the children, which means that we can't pick them up. It's sadistic. They're also hard as steel, so if we interfere with the line of children, they'll then bump into each other and harm one another like hedgehogs, and you get a very, painful looking silhouette of the kids with the thorns all around them bumping into each other. On top of that, the final member of the trio is most likely manifesting nightmares as real creatures. The children's greatest fears have come to life to prevent any attempt to save them. And once again, you see Colin there dreaming of the evil wolves that are now turning into cryptids. The irony is the children are simply walking in a line in broad daylight, but we're unable to do anything to help them. All due to the game created by those three powers working together. So Killingham, Summers, and of course, Gunko. But not so, we will save them. It seems quicker to aim for the three causing all the problems. You say they're immortal, but they're hashed to, oh, and this is, okay. Every time I read is this character, I always forget that he sounds like this. This is the member of the New Giant Pirates. You say they're immortal, but there has to be a way to stop them. Like trapping him in something or crushing him or eating him or something. I agree with that. We're nearly up to the sun world and you got them going up. Okay. And you see ka-chunk as the elevator finally stops. Okay. Up in the sun world as Harden looks up and you can see the giant nightmares are already running rampant. You get a giant nightmare dragon up there. You got another one with a helmet on and a sword, a giant bird dragon creature. This is beyond anything that I ever imagined. Is there no limit to these nightmare monsters? And you can see that troll thing in the background. It's like a troll cyclops. I don't even think we've even seen that one before. You've got the little cloud one, which I believe we've seen. We got the flying lion. The one that's always very interesting to me is the one that looks like Nika. It's like, what in the world? Why are you scared of that? That's a very weird one. Where it's, again, a character that looks like Nika with the sun shield, and yet it's terrorizing all of them. Now, obviously, it's not actually Nika. It doesn't have those powers. But still at all, how does that work? You make a nightmare of Nika, but Luffy actually has the powers. Like, what's going on there? Anyway, this is beyond anything that I imagined. Is there no limit to these nightmare monsters? Now look over there. Is that the great Eric? Dory and Boggy's crew was on board, but the monsters downed the ship as they fought back. Truly unthinkable. Is that Haruden? Okay, and you got the other giants looking over at him. Kashi, you're alive. We've been down to the underworld. Please tell us what's happening. And then he's going, it's hard to believe, but I'll try to explain. And he is looking really messed up right now. Captains Dory and Broggy are on their way to kill Chief Yarl. And you've got demonized Domi Reversi, Dory and Broggy, full-fanged, giant wings, spear, axe, trident in hand, along with some of the other giant pirates, running on up, saying, please, you have to stop them. Everyone has gone completely mad. And you can see these other giants are dwarfed in comparison to this Domi Reversi looking version of him. What about the children, Kashi? What about them? Ripley's got a group chasing after them, but we haven't had any word about success or not. They should have reached the port by now. And you, Rodo, what about me? Bjorn's there. I have to go. My brother is one of the hostages. And so Rhodes running off. Gerd's going with him. Also, so is the guy with the lisp, whose name I always forget, with the homie shield. They're off there on their way. They say, I'll go with them. Me too. Okay. Kashi, which way is the school? Apparently, Nami's group is near it. That's good that Sanji's worried about her. I like that. Do you see that fire? That fire is the school and the library burning. But why are they on fire? You say that Dory and Broggy have gone mad, and Zoro, again, not even worried about Nami. He's like, I know she can take care of herself. I want to know what's going on with Dory and Broggy. These are these brave warriors that I know. What's happening with them? You've got the explanation from Kashi saying, that's right. Please, you must hurry. Chief Yarl is in danger. And once again, you get another Oda map autograph. You get the branch Route 8, where you see the full branch of the tree. You got the little current location of all that. We actually really did need this chapter too, by the way. Like I'll talk about this more in my review, but I do feel like we needed a little refresher of what's going on and like where everybody is. Because I'll be so for real, like I forgot what the placement was of everybody since the last time that we had this and since the last time we were in the middle of this action. But all right, Saul's on the base of the tree, school in the library, Western Village is Yarl, Aris Castle's on the other side. Current location, you see Gaban, Chopper, Zoro, Sanji, and then all the new giant pirates. Okay, branch route 8. Now, meanwhile, you're seeing a little bit of the shot of the Walrus School and Library, and you get this really sad silhouette of just the devastation and the tree burning. And then another little thing the narrator says, this is by the library, the Straw Hat crew. Okay, And then the library's burning. Chopper's still not back yet either, and Brook has some kind of idea in his head and ran off. They're taking the kids. Get these arrows off of me. I never want to see Master Dory and Broggy like that. Now, that's an interesting line. That he said Brook has some kind of idea in his head and ran off. Obviously, that's going to have something to do with Gunko. Okay. And you got Jinbei behind them. Meanwhile, you get another little narrator box. It says, this is under the power of Domi Reversi. The giant pirates head for the western village. And you can see, again, Giant Dory and Broggy, fully Domi Reversi, taking out some of these giants, begging for their lives as they're all screaming, kill Yarl. And they're saying, please, captains, come back to your senses, please. You got the rescue team over in the top left. We're coming for you, kids. Get those monsters out of the way. And you've got Ripley over there. Very, very nice. And then finally, a little shot of the hostage where it says, we're going to be to the port soon. And Colin's right in the front saying, don't whine. You're warriors of Elbaf. And the little kids in the background are like, we're not warriors. What are you talking about? We can complain all we want. I'm like those kids. If I was in this situation, I was being mind controlled by Emu, and I had to walk to my doom from an arrow from Gunko, I'd be complaining too. So even if you're a brave warrior of the sea, kid, don't worry about it. I'd be complaining as well. We also get a shot of the Western Village. Okay. No, flee if you wish. It's time to flee, Chief Yarl. There's no reasoning with Captain Dory and Captain Broggy right now. I'll stay. I have something to say to Elbaf. Okay. And then finally, you get the little Den Den Mushi. Also, that line is interesting. Flee Chief Yarl, and he says, no, I have something to say. Okay. What's that going to be? Hear me, we're like getting right into it. He's going to do a whole big speech. Okay. I'm seated. I have my coffee. I've got my water. Big speech from Chief Yarl. Let's hear this. I feel like I should do this in character. Hold on. Hear me, Elbaf. I wish to tell you everything before I die. We're getting like a speech from Yarl along the lines of Whitebeard at Marineford. This is crazy. Is that Chief Yarl? Our old liege, wise King Harold, wished to bring Elbaf into the world government so that we might coexist with the rest of the world. And Yarl once again standing by the Den Den Mushi, Gunko intently listening. But on that fateful day, 14 years ago, he was betrayed and denied his wish. And you can see more of these giants still listening like, Chief Yarl, is that really you? I witnessed a demon slaughter Harold and the rest of his soldiers. Harold resisted bending the knee and handing over Elbaf to the demon. He fought and he died. And they're all going, wait, what? I thought Loki killed the king. What's happening here? And again, this is smart of him to explain it like this, because now it's easily digestible. People are going to believe it a little bit more. So you got over here, Yarl saying, if the people learned the truth, they would rise up in vengeance and become the warfaring nation that Harold did not desire for us. So I held my silence. Loki, meanwhile, bore the rage of the nation upon his back and took to sea. He may be tactless, but Loki is innocent. And you get doom doom right in the front as Jarl's making this proclamation. This is great. We need this for Loki. Very happy this is happening sooner rather than later, so we don't have all this confusion. I like that we're doing this to get right into it. This is very good. And Haruden and Zoro are like, all right, that was a bit inaccurate, but it was a nice turn of phrase. And Haruden is even saying, look, that's nicer than Loki deserves, but it is what it is. And the people are going, what? Innocent. All right. And now Jarl continues his speech. Great double-page spread there. We're getting Killingham in like a hybrid form with his human face, but his like Kieran body. You've got Gunko there, still with her underwear pants. Still crazy to me that Oda decided that was a good idea. And Summers sitting there as well, just listening intently to this conversation. And Jarl begins to proclaim, today, it seems as though that they had given up initially, but they once again require our massive power. And thus, 3 demons have come back in an attempt to take over our country. And Summers is like yawning through this, going, I could take a nap and still complete the mission at this point. He's saying this, he's going to get cooked. They are all getting cooked. We're in and out here very fast. After everything that we saw with Loki, dude, this is going to be over very, very, very quickly. I think when you've got Gear 5 Luffy, Loki, as we've seen him in the flashback, Ragnar, the new giant pirates, Zoro and Sanji, they're cooked. They're cooked. I don't even really think there's an opportunity for them to potentially win. They're cooked. So Yarl once again proclaiming, listen up, sea devils. Not sea devils, excuse me. I don't know why I said sea devils. It says you devils. In my brain, I'm thinking sea devils because I'm already thinking of different ideas about Emu, but it's okay. We'll get there when we get there. Listen up, you devils. If you spare the children's lives, we will freely give up our culture and history. Now, this is crazy. You can literally beat them. Don't say this, Yarl. But if you think you've broken our spirit, you are sorely mistaken. And once again, you get the librarian, you get the little kid that was going to sacrifice herself before. Do not expect Harold's patience from us. You think you can rule over us and enslave us? Who do you think it is you're talking to? And Gunko's looking down. Clearly, I think she's the only one who understands they might actually be in trouble right now. I'm sorry, children. I must ask you to cover your ears now. And you got Usopp in the back just cheering him on, going, that's right, Yarl, you tell him. The Elbaf I dreamed up doesn't bow to anyone. You go, let's go, let's go. So the kids, I don't think the kids can cover their ears, though. I don't think you can do anything, can they? And they're walking in a straight line. I don't think they can do anything. They're like semi-hypnotized. If the world is destined to be split in two, as the Harley's prophecy suggests, then Elbaf shall be an enemy to the world government. Do you think that thorns, reversi, and illusions will submit us to your yoke? And you got Zoro going, man, I really like this old guy. This is good. He knows how to give a good speech. And, okay, Haruden clarifying as well, 3 centuries ago, Yarl was actually the strongest man on the sea. That is new information. Very cool. And you got the rest of the giants going, damn right, Chief Yarl, let's go, let's go, let's go. Usopp just fanboying over this, going, the Elbaf I love is back. Okay, now actually do something. Like, that's my thing to Usopp. You're fanboying, do something, bro. All right, don't just fanboy. We want to see you step up, be a brave warrior of the sea. And then even Nami's like, just find a way to undo these arrows. Stop worrying about this right now. So, and Yarl continues his speech saying, we will never give in to your rule. Am I wrong? Are you proud warriors of Elbaf? And then they're all going, woo, 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 woo. Protect the peace that Harold envisioned. And once again, you've got Dorian Broggy walking over there. All the other giants, all of them going, rah, and screaming and screaming. You got the swords and everything like that running into battle. We caught up. Now watch out that they don't trap you between them. And once again, Dorian Broggy, Haruden running over the front, and Zoro with the ending line of the chapter, interesting, finally unsheathing his sword and saying, I've got a plan. One Piece, 1172 end. All right, man. Very, very nice. Very nice. Okay, I think overall this isn't obviously a review time. This isn't obviously like a super hype chapter. This is not like a reaction worthy, like crazy super hype chapter. There's good moments, right? And I think Yarl's speech is very good, but there's no like big reveals in this one. This is mostly to move the plot along, but that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like this is not a complaint. This is just me saying that like, this is setting us up so we finally get to the opportunity that things can get really, really hype, right? It's setting up the matchups, setting up some of the big reveals. Getting this speech from Yarl, I think was actually a very good decision for them to immediately be like, we just came out of this really long, year-long flashback, right? We found out all this stuff about Loki, all this stuff about the past, God Valley, rocks, everything. We need to not necessarily catch the people of Elbaf up to speed on what happened regarding all that stuff, but we at least, at the very least, because that's contextual stuff, we need to catch them up to speed with Loki and what's going on with him. Because very soon, within the next couple chapters, we're going to get Loki, just as we saw from the previous chapter, jumping up in the sky, slashing over at these nightmare cryptids. And a lot of the other giants would have been very confused if we didn't get this explanation from Yarl of what exactly is happening here and why is he finally on our side again. When, there's generations of giant children who have believed Loki to be bad. who have just known their entire, like these kids walking around, these kids have known their whole lives that Loki was this evil giant trapped in the bottom of the underworld. And now in one fell swoop with this Yarl speech, we're back in business, right? The giants of Elbaf have been roused for war once again. I think the best line, honestly, from Yarl, the coldest line was like, we don't have the patience of Harold. Saying like, Harold might have put up with you. We're not going to do the same thing. You're a bunch of scurvy sea dogs. You're going down. We're taking you sea devils. Again, he didn't say that. He just called them devils. But I like the name sea devils. I think that's cool. Again, cool double page spread of the three members of the God Knights. I think that was really cool. I'm excited to see them do something. I am curious, like what the matchups are going to be. I think we're in a weird situation because I do feel like we are reaching the climax of Elbaf, but we're at a point where I feel like it's not super clear if there's going to be like one core antagonist, you know? Because in fact, I don't think there will be. I think like with Shamrock having already left and going back to Marijoa and setting up everything for Final War and the stuff with the revolutionaries, we're in a really unique position where we're basically in like what I am presuming to be the last major like island adventure story arc before Final War and Laugh Tale, right? We're in the middle of it right now. And yet we're in a situation in which, unlike Dressrosa, where we had Doflamingo, unlike Whole Cake Island, where we had Big Mom, Wano, where we had Kaido, there's not just one clear antagonist outside of the antagonist being the world government. You know, you could make the argument that the overarching antagonist of this arc is Emu, obviously, right? I mean, he's the one that's controlling Gunko. He's the one, you know, doing all this stuff, dropping all the powers around, and Killingham and Summers are there as well. But realistically, it's just a strange situation to have the villains of the arc, the core villains of the arc, be three separate characters off of the primary overarching antagonist as opposed to one with a simple goal. It's a nice change. I think it's just a nice change of pace. And I like them bringing up the fact that like you wouldn't necessarily think of the power of like dreams, the powers of arrows, and the power of thorns working in a way that can really do a ton of destruction. But when they lay it out the way that they laid it out and actually show what's been happening in Elbaf, the powers of these three characters really do work quite well in synergy, where, you know, one of them can create these nightmares from these kids. The other one wraps the thorns around them. So if they start walking, they end up bumping into each other, and the arrow takes them right where they need to go. I am, again, very curious to see who's going to fight these three, because Luffy obviously could fight any of them. Luffy's at a point where, you know, he's our protagonist. He can go Gear 5 and take out any of them. Is it going to be a Nightmare Cryptid? Is it going to be, I don't think it's going to be Summers, because Summers has that relationship with Gaban. So I wonder if maybe we're going to get like a Gaban rematch, or maybe like Sanji or somebody taking him on. Summers with the idea of like passion and love, and knowing what we know from Sanji, I feel like that would make for a pretty good opponent for him. But also Summers has a sword with the Thorn Whip thing. So maybe that'll be Zoro. I don't really know. And then Gunko, I mean, they highlight in this chapter specifically during that sequence with the Straw Hats, Gunko is probably going to be dealt with by Brook. And it's probably not even going to be a fight. It's probably going to be something along the lines of, you know, come back to your senses, you know who you are, maybe appealing to like that core emotion or desire or like want for a family that we kind of saw break rocks out of it for a little bit. Obviously, eventually, Emu was able to coax Rocks into being super upset and fully take over him with Domi Reversi. But there were those moments of like appealing to Rocks' humanity that I did think actually kind of poked through the Domi Reversi. And I do ultimately think like love or like passion might be an aspect of being able to weaken the powers of Emu, like be able to loosen the grip of Emu. So I don't know. We're going to find out more about that. But I do think Brook is going to play a vital role in this stuff with Gunko. And then Killingham, like Killingham's a weird situation because he's creating all these giant like nightmare demon things. And obviously you could set up fights with each of these demons. Like Dory and Bragi, I think it'd be cool to fight them with Loki and Haruden, to have these two brothers fighting these two clashing giants that have been at it for years, and like the new generation passing it over, you know, and taking down the old generation. I think that's kind of cool. Obviously, I don't want Dory and Bragi to die. I don't think they will die. I think there's going to be a way to knock them out of it. I also still think there's going to be something with Luffy that's going to be, you know, overarching this entire conflict, in which he like Gear 5s and then finds a way to reverse the Domi Reversi. You know what I mean? Like finds a way to turn the black pieces white and turn everybody good. I don't know. We're going to see. I still feel like that's the direction that we're going in. But again, that leaves us in a weird situation in which, like, there's not a clear where we are right now 1v1 fight at the end of this arc, because I don't think Emu shows up. I don't think we're going to get a God Valley situation in which, like, Emu just appears, right? Other than through Gunko or through Summers or through Killingham. Emu's not going to show up themselves. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm very curious as to how this is all going to wrap up and who's going to fight who, and how quickly it's going to wrap up as well. Because again, like, the way they're talking about this, and Yarl saying, look, you give up the kids, that's fine. We'll give up our culture and history. But if you're going to fight us, you're not going to give up the kids. We're going to fight you to the death. We're, the whole island of warriors. Fine. But I'm also like, knowing what we know and having seen Loki and having seen Luffy and knowing the other characters that are here, I do think this will be relatively simple to take them down. Like, unless we get some really crazy power buffs or we find out things that we don't already know about these characters, which is probably going to happen. I think it seems pretty cut and dry. Like, I'm not, after everything that we saw during the God Valley flashback and everything we now know about Loki and Luffy, I'm not worried about these clowns. Not at all. I have no concern whatsoever about Gunko and Summers and Killingham. Summers, back in the flashback, was losing his mind over Rayleigh when Rayleigh pulled up, right? Like, Killingham, he's got a crazy power with the nightmares and the cryptid things that are, like, nigh unbeatable. But Loki has taken down the giant one that looked like a skeleton in the previous chapter. And like I said, Gunko, I think, is going to get appealed to by Brooke, and there's going to be something that breaks her out of it. I still stand by what I said a couple, maybe it was like 3 or 4 chapters ago, when we had that discussion about, like, what's going to happen when Emu takes the power away from some of these God Knights, right? In a similar fashion to, like, when he took the power away from the Gorosei, where when, Emu took the power from Saturn essentially disintegrated, right? He was screaming and he lost his power and he's like, please, Emu, I beg you, mercy, mercy, mercy. And then, L Clown died like the bum he was, and that was that. I am wondering if a similar situation is going to happen here with Gunko, because we know Gunko should be an old woman at this point, right? Knowing her age, knowing what she's been through, she should be very, very old. So I'm wondering if we get a situation in which Gunko is appealed to by Brooke. Somehow Brooke is able to get through to her through some weird thing regarding, like, his soul powers. Because again, that's a very, like, the Yomi Yomi no Mi is like a very weird devil fruit. That's the kind of thing where, like, I feel if Oda wants to just throw a curveball, he can come up with some weird thing relating to, like, souls or reviving or death through that fruit to be able to, like, break Gunko out of this. So I'm not really too concerned about that. But again, I think when Brooke eventually appeals to Gunko and has his idea to take care of this, I do wonder if when Emu removes the power from Gunko, if she is going to sort of have a moment of realization of, like, knowing that she was controlled her whole life, probably, recognizing Brooke, saying, like, thank you for saving me like you always did when I was a kid or something along those lines, and then just, like, dying, and that being the way that she gets taken care of. Summers and Killingham, I mean, at this point, we're late in the game. You can kill them too. I don't see a situation in which these guys don't die here. I think all 3 of these guys are in a position where they can all die during the end of Elbaf. I think we're no longer at the point of One Piece where, like, the villains have to, be defeated and then thrown into Impel Down, and then, eventually we'll come back for a future story arc. Again, like, we're getting into Final War now. We're not in a situation where these dudes have to live. Kill them. There's no reason. You don't have to have these characters live anymore. So I do think, actually, if you want to move the story along going into Final War, you're going to have to take out some of these celestial dragons. You're going to have to take out some of these God Knights, because then it's going to obviously, make it a little bit easier and a little more manageable when we get into Final War and we have to take out Emu proper, right? And then you've got everybody working together to take out this demon of the sea. It's going to be nuts. Yeah, but I don't know. I like the way this has been set up. I think this is a good sort of recap chapter. I really like that speech from Yarl. I think the speech from Yarl was good. And I mostly just reminded us of where we are going to be in the story and, like, where everybody is on the island and what's going on with everyone. Some of the art was pretty good. Again, we got 2 of those Oda charts, which I thought was kind of funny. We don't normally get 2 of those per chapter, but I like that. We got the speech from the narrator. Again, very interested on page, let me pull this up, page 6. Very interested in that nightmare cryptid that looks like Nika. I am wondering if that's going to come into play at any point. I feel like it has to, right? I think maybe that is going to be how Luffy fully finds out about Nika. Because right now he's heard the name, he's heard stories, but he doesn't fully understand like what he is. And I almost wonder if maybe we're going to have an opportunity in which Luffy comes face to face with him and he's like, wait a minute, you look a little bit like my Gear 5 form. And then through some explanation from the Giants or whatever, Luffy then is finding out that, oh, that's actually meant to be a representation of him. And Luffy's like, but that's not true. I love liberation and laughter and joy or whatever, and you get this like dichotomy of this evil nightmare version of Nika that one of the kids has versus Luffy. I don't know. Yeah, but I think that could be interesting. Again, these nightmare things, I think they're all going to be one-shotted eventually when we run into those situations. We're going to see something similar to what we saw with Loki, where one big attack, some hype attack is going to take them down. And then ultimately it's going to come down to those final three. Yeah, but I mean, that's pretty much it. I don't really have much more to say about the chapter itself. I mean, we'll get into super chats. We'll get into some discussion. I'll read the chapter. We'll look at the thumbnail reveal. But for the most part, I think that's just my overall reaction to the chapter. I think it's a good setup, a good little recap for where we are in the story right now. And I like that speech from Yarl, and I like the fact that the people now like trust Loki and believe in Loki because of Yarl's speech. I think that's great. Again, that's what Loki needed. I also think it's smart that they didn't prolong it, because I think that's one of those things that if this was a story arc, maybe 3 or 4 story arcs ago, I could see a world in which Oda would have been like, no, we're going to drag this out for like 20 chapters of the people not fully trusting Loki and, not wanting to work with him, and then him working against them, and then eventually them, being like, oh, no, you are actually good. I think we're getting the meat and potatoes of it, which is smart and good. And I think we're all ready kind of for the conclusion. The one other thing I'll say, I hope Usopp does something, man. That's the only other thing I'll say. We've been hyping up the idea of like Usopp being involved in Elbaf for literally as long as I've been a YouTuber, for as long as I've been reading One Piece. I've been reading One Piece since I was like 12. And so I started reading it in Cirque Village, but I actually actively started reading it in Shonen Jump around the time of Alabasta, right? So that was after Little Garden. That was after Usopp was like, I want to go to Elbaf. I want to see what the Giants can do. So literally my entire life reading One Piece, the entire time I have pretty much been aware of this series and been part of the fandom, I've wanted to see Usopp do something in Elbaf and meet with his heroes. And I hope that we get that. I hope we get something from Usopp. Again, I think the idea of him potentially like using Ragnar, or like Ragnar finding him worthy in some way, could be kind of cool. And then the play on the idea of like Usopp doing the hammer back in Thriller Bark against Perona, having like the giant fake hammer, maybe bringing that back and have a cute little parallel there with Usopp and the actual Ragnar doing damage against one of the nightmares or something. Again, these nightmare creatures, this is kind of a smart out from Oda, because he can make them as dangerous as he wants them to be, or as washes as he wants them to be, right? I think he can make them total pushover characters, or he can make them seem really, really dangerous. And it all depends on like the imagination of the child that dreamed up the nightmare. So I could totally see a world in which like Usopp picks up the hammer or something and takes out one of them. Especially if the hammer just is like the strength of a giant squirrel. Like that line was so funny earlier in the chapter where they were talking about like the giant kids, right? And Sanji and Zoro were having that talk with Haruden, being like, wait, but they're not normal kids, they're giant children. How are they carrying them to the boats? And Zoro looks at Sanji like, are you stupid, bro? We're strong. We're in One Piece. Characters can do supernatural things and have superhuman strength all the time. Like, what do you mean? So yeah, I do hope Usopp does something, but yeah, I don't know. Overall, again, it was a solid chapter, solid recap chapter. I liked it. Yeah, I like Computer the King in my chat said, let Usopp shoot the hammer from his slingshot. Yo, could you imagine? Usopp takes Ragnar, puts it there, and then yanks the slingshot back like buckler style, and then whoo, as it go flying backwards. That'd be kind of cool, actually. Yeah, I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all. But yeah, solid chapter. With that being said, I want to see what James did for the thumbnail. Oh, okay. Interesting. I said I want to see what James did for the thumbnail this week. James did 2 thumbnails. This is weird. It looks like the same thumbnail, but it's just different colors. So I'm going to pull this up on the screen. Again, apologies, I'm in mobile format this week. But this is one of them right there. Very, very cool. He gave Yarl a similar color design to Loki, which I think is kind of neat. I like that he did this. He's basically future-proofing himself on the off chance that one day, we end up getting a weird color scheme revealed for these characters. So you go with Yarl, and then Usopp fanboying in the front, golden Usopp with the eyeballs. And then he sent over the second one. So you can see there's another one. He sent over the second one with like a green helmet and more kind of natural desaturated colors with Usopp in the front as well. So this is a little less stylized. I actually think I prefer this one. I think this one is like really beautiful. Also, it's not normal to get like a deep green in any of these thumbnail arts. I think like that color scheme of like the deep green, the grays and the golds, I think really works nicely for Elbaf. I would hope to see that once we get out of like the Lego stuff in the anime, that Elbaf looks a little bit like this. But yeah, he did a superb job on both of these. Let me know in the chat which one you like more. Do you like the pink one or do you like the green one? Again, the pink one I think is probably more likely of what we're going to get from Oda. But the green one is what I prefer, and I think is a little more naturalistic. But yeah, please let me know over in the live chat. I think that is great, man. Really, really. Also, the detail on Usopp there with the hearts. So again, for anyone who's an audio listener, basically James drew the Yarl speech from the chapter with Usopp fanboying over Yarl, which I think is kind of nice. So yeah, really, really, really solid, solid thumbnail for a solid chapter of One Piece, man. Again, nothing too crazy. I'm also happy that it wasn't anything too crazy. I always feel like whenever I'm out of town, I always worry that it's going to be like a 10 out of 10 crazy, like game-changing chapter. And so whenever it's something like this, that's a couple cool moments, but overall is like just a cool chapter continuing on the story. I'm a fan of that. I like that. I like that. Makes my job a little easier. With that being said, let me get into talking with the chat and seeing what's going on with them. Let me see. We have a super chat coming from Mr. 10 Years in the Making saying, we're doing vertical stream right now. What's going on? Well, no. So we're vertical because, again, I'm out of town. So we're on a mobile stream today because I'm out of town. Also, though, it's fun. I'm getting to chat with all of you live during the stream. We're having a good time. Saying, by the way, what's your next game going to be? And what are your thoughts on Dragon Ball Super's Moro arc? I don't care at all about Dragon Ball Super. I've said this before. I said this on multiple other live streams since that announcement. I'm not a Dragon Ball person. Like, I like the characters, but I didn't grow up with it in the same way that everybody else did. I've talked about this on like my favorite anime streams that I've done before. When I grew up, right, when I was growing up in like 2000 and 1999, when Adult Swim was at its peak and Toonami was at its peak, I wasn't watching Naruto. Like, I wasn't watching Bleach. I wasn't watching Dragon Ball. I wasn't really watching on like any of these shonen whatsoever. I was watching Cowboy Bebop. I was watching Inuyasha. I was watching Trigun. I was watching all the stuff that was on Adult Swim. I don't know. I never came home. Also, like, when I was in middle school and when I was in high school, I wasn't like coming home from school and watching TV. I was coming home from school and doing my homework or playing video games, or I was staying late at school doing like rehearsals for plays. And so I mostly missed the Toonami block. So the anime that I grew up on were all anime that were on Adult Swim. Again, Ghost in the Shell, Cowboy Bebop, Inuyasha, Samurai Champloo, all that kind of stuff. That was like my, middle school, high school years. I guess really like Ghost in the Shell, Bebop, and Inuyasha would have been like more middle school going into high school. And then I guess going into high school would have been more like Trigun and Samurai Champloo and stuff along those lines. But yeah, I grew up with shonen and didn't really, I grew up in the era of shonen, of the big three, but I didn't really like get into shonen until I was older. The only shonen I was into was One Piece. And even then, I didn't watch One Piece religiously because we had that horrible 4Kids dub going on at the time. So it wasn't the kind of thing where I was like watching it after school. I was reading the manga and going to Borders with my dad and sitting and reading the manga volumes, but I wasn't, or like reading in Shonen Jump, but I wasn't really watching the show. So yeah. So I don't really particularly care about the Moro arc stuff. Like, it's cool for the people who like it, but I think one day I would like to sit down and like actually watch Dragon Ball. But I also think it's a weird situation because Dragon Ball is one of those things that it's the granddaddy of all shonen, right? Like, I am aware of pretty much everything major that ever happens in Dragon Ball. Like, I'm aware of it. I know what happens, I know like the major story arcs. I know Frieza, I know Boo. So I wouldn't be watching it going in completely blind, and I think that would make it a little less fun for me. I think the fun of, what we've been doing recently with these Bleach read-throughs is that I knew like a couple little things. Like I knew that Aizen was bad, or I knew, I guess I really didn't know much else beyond the fact that Aizen was bad. And so going into like reading the Bleach read-through, right now we're in the middle of no, in fact, we're out of the pendulum arc. We're into the fights with the Arankar, in the Karakura Town arc is where we are currently in the Bleach read-through. And I'm having a blast, man. I didn't know any of the power sets of these characters. I didn't know what was going to happen with them. I didn't know anything about the Vizards. I certainly had no idea they were connected to Soul Society. I'm going into that series relatively blind, and it's been a fun experience. Whereas with Dragon Ball, I think like if I was to get into Dragon Ball now, I don't even know what the best way to go about it would be, because I think I would be sitting through a lot of episodes of things that I already know, and I don't think the hype would hit me the same way, and then I think people would be upset that the hype wasn't hitting me the same way, where they're like, why aren't you reacting? React better. Why don't you think this is hype? Because other people grew up with it or something, and I just don't have that familiarity with it, But I like the characters of Dragon Ball. I like the world of Dragon Ball. I like Akira Toriyama. I think it's great. I think it's a classic, great series. I have no hate to Dragon Ball. I just don't, I don't know. I don't particularly care, Again, maybe one day I'll go through and I'll actually watch all of it or read all of it. But I think Dragon Ball is just one of those things that like you can't avoid in terms of like spoilers. I've also seen a lot of the Dragon Ball movies in theaters because I've gone to like press events. So I've seen the Broly movie, Resurrection F. I've seen a lot of this stuff. So I know like the Super Saiyan God forms. I'm not going to be surprised by forms or power-ups when watching Dragon Ball. And I think for the most part, that would be a lot of fun, But yeah, I don't know. Again, it's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. I just, I don't know. I'm just not super interested. What was the other thing you asked? You asked me about, what's my next game going to be? Well, Yakuza Kiwami comes out in 3 days? Kiwami 3 comes out it doesn't come out in 3 days. What am I talking about? Today's the 1st. Comes out in 10 days. Kiwami 3, I'm definitely going to play. I don't know if that's going to be all streamed. I'll probably do a video. I just finished Escape from Ever After. I'll be talking about that on TouchBase later this week. What's some other games? Requiem. I'll probably play some Resident Evil Requiem. Probably not on stream. Maybe I'll do one stream. Maybe I'll do it over on Twitch. If you guys want some Resident Evil stuff from me, maybe go follow my Twitch channel because maybe I'll do it on Twitch. Mario Tennis. I'll probably play some Mario Tennis. That'll be fun when that comes out. And Pokemon. Pokemon Day's coming up very, very soon. So whatever gets announced during Pokemon Day, I'm sure I'm going to play as well. But again, there's so much stuff to play this year that I'm not really even thinking about it. Yeah. And of course, GTA at the end of the year too, I definitely want to give a little bit of a test with. Naruto Toad Sage came through with the membership. Greatly appreciate you, Nakama. Saying, call me crazy, but I do not understand people's bloodlust obsession with characters needing to die for good storytelling. Why is death a necessity? It's not a necessity. I just think it's weird that when you're in these life or death situations where your arms are getting ripped off and your limbs are getting ripped off, that there's some other way to explain why these characters are alive. I think it's a necessity for an earlier part of the story to not have the characters die if you want them to come back and have a role in the story. I understand completely why Doflamingo didn't die in Dressrosa. I get it. That's fine. I don't think that necessarily makes good storytelling. But I think when you're dealing with nearly immortal characters that have been alive for hundreds of years, getting their arms and limbs ripped off and their heads chopped off, and they're still alive. At the end of Elbaf, after everything, if they find a way to actually damage these people and they're just fine, maybe they're bruised up a little bit and they're just fine, you don't think that's going to be a little stupid? Again, you could feel however you want to feel. That's fine. It doesn't necessarily mean it's bad storytelling if the characters don't die. I wouldn't make that argument at all. I'm just saying that I think we're at the point in the story where the stakes are high enough where I think Oda is going to say, okay, you know what? It's time to kill off some characters. I have no need for these characters anymore. Again, I think the reason why he doesn't kill off characters as frequently is because they have a story reason to be there. But if there's no story reason for the character to be there, why would he keep them alive anymore? You know what I mean? What's the point? Also, Naruto Toad Sage came through again and said, I'm also curious to see what Brook is up to. We know nothing about him before the Rumbar Pirates, and I'm wondering if maybe he's a former God Knight who went rogue. I mean, I would love that. I love the idea that, like, either Brook was a former God Knight or, you know, we know that at some point he was a bodyguard for the kingdom, so we know that there's a relationship there with Gunko's family, so I think that could be kind of cool as well to dive into. Yeah, but I'm right there with you. I mean, I think the God Knight tie, I think the fact that Jinbei straight up in this chapter brings up and lays out plainly Brook has an idea on how to deal with this leads me to believe that there's no doubt in my mind that he is going to have something to do with the downfall of Gunko and stopping her in some way. Yeah, there's not even a question there. Yeah. Akalmal said, why did Oda keep Kinemon alive still? Look, you're talking to the wrong person. I wanted Kinemon to die. I think the dude got chopped in half and brutalized on the top of Wano country, you know, and then suddenly actually law didn't put me back together and I'm gonna fart my way back to life. Like, horrible. Literally one of the worst decisions Oda's ever made in One Piece. But I've talked about that on multiple situations. I'm not gonna dive into a whole speech about it again. If you don't mind that Kinemon didn't die, that's cool, whatever. I think it's irrelevant to the story because quite literally Yamato's whole reason for not joining the crew and staying back in Wano country was to be the mentor and to watch over Momonosuke. But that doesn't matter, and that doesn't need to happen when Kinemon is still alive, and Kinemon's been watching over Momonosuke his entire life. Like, if Kinemon is still watching over Momonosuke, what is the point of Yamato staying? There's no reason. What, so we can get a useless cover story for 50 chapters with one reveal in it, being Kosuke Moria that could have been an SBS? Miss me with that. Yeah, miss me with that. One of the worst, we're not going to get into it again. No Wano hate from me. I've talked about Wano hate enough. That arc is... I'm not going to get into it. Mr. Cat super chatted and said, last month was also the 10-year anniversary of me starting One Piece. Oh, no, 10-month anniversary, excuse me. Yo, Nakama, welcome. Welcome. And I'm happy that you're finally caught up. 10 months. Wow, and you're reading the new chapters with us. That's pretty amazing. Lucky98 super chatted and became a member. And said, I actually think Brook's music is going to be the key to snapping Gunko out of Imu's mind control. Love that idea as well. Love the idea that Brook's music has something to do with it, that somehow Gunko recognizes the melody, especially because, like, you think of how music works in the real world and, you know, how many deep memories and deep emotions you can connect to when you hear a song that you remember when you were a kid. You know, there's songs that I'll hear on the radio nowadays that I haven't heard in like 20 years, that are like smooth jazz songs that immediately bring me back to when I was in like the backseat of the car driving with my parents to Toys R Us while they were listening to WNDA 95.5. You know, like there's music and memory, they go hand in hand. And emotion as well, too. And love and passion, all that kind of stuff. Again, all the things that I think is going to break Gunko out of Imu's control has a direct tie to music. So I'm right there with you. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, great idea. Ipo says, do you remember Bellamy? I sure do. Yep. Does Oda? That's the question. Does Oda remember Bellamy? Let me scrolling up. We got another super chat here. Oh, thank you. Wow, Mr. Cat. Yo, Mr. Cat coming through with an upgraded membership to Club Mammoth. You love to see that. Thank you very much for joining the Club Mammoth squad, Mr. Cat. Appreciate that. Also, Joey in the chat said, Roger, this is actually the first time I've been able to catch one of your reaction videos live. First time in a long minute at the very least. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate that. Bright Brawler saying, I actually think that Brook might do some soul music to undo the Domi Reversi, and maybe that'll affect Gunko as well. So again, right along the lines of what the rest of us were saying, talking about the music, speaking to Gunko and breaking her out of it. Very nice. Stefan Dog sent some jewels as well. Stefan, were you the one who set off the owl that was in the chat earlier? That's cool. And I think that was it. Yo, hold on a minute. Yo, we got Irving. Irving's in the chat. I didn't know you were here, Irving. Yo, Irving saying, wait, you're cooking. Yo, Irving, I gotta shout out something real quick. So Irving, who's in the chat right now, is one of the creators of Anime Gear Guru, which makes really amazing anime clothing. I have a law jacket that Anime Gear Guru did that I wore to Frosty Faustings this weekend. Dude, so many people, both at Frosty Faustings and at the airport, were like, dude, where did you get that law jacket? So I am pretty sure I made some sales for you this weekend when I was like, that's my guy Irving and Anime Gear Guru, go check them out, get their law jackets. Yo, great seeing you in the chat, Irving. I'm sorry I didn't see you earlier. Yo, shout out, man. Love seeing you in here. Love seeing you in here. Also, we got Roberto saying, I think you missed my super chat earlier. Did I? Let me look. It's not showing up under viewer activity. Oh no, here we go. Roberto came through and said, Roger, I'm super glad that I get to do the live chapter with you. Oh, thank you very much. I've been having a tough weekend. So to everyone in the chat and on Discord, thank you very, very much. And I'm glad I get to be here with you. Roberto, that's very sweet. Thank you very much, Roberto. Thanks again for coming through to the live stream. I'm sorry that you had a tough weekend. Hopefully this chapter has made things a little better for you. Hopefully hanging out with the live chat, hanging out with everybody has made things a little bit easier. But sorry to hear the fact that you had a bad weekend. But yeah, once again, please, by all means, talk with the Discord server and, talk with the community. We're all here for you, buddy. Yeah, Nakama. And then let me see. Is that everything? I think that's pretty much everything. I'm looking. People talking about Yonko. Jab saying, I don't want Yamato to join the crew. Wouldn't made no sense. I get that. There's a lot of people who don't like Yamato. Been on a nostalgia kick lately and heard a bunch of 80s music like Michael Jackson, Phil Collins, and Genesis and Queen. That's from Rob Harley. Shout out to you, Rob. Nice to see you here. Oh, we got one final member message. This one comes from Aust51989, who said, what if Zoro's plan is to ask Dory and Broggy who is stronger, and they start fighting each other, and then they double knock out each other? What if Zoro's plan is to ask Dory and Broggy who is stronger, and they start fighting each other? You appeal to their original rivalry and have the two of them fight one another? That would be kind of cool. In fact, I would love that. I would genuinely love that. You have the idea of these two giant Domi reversing characters fighting at each other and slashing everyone up. That would actually be awesome. I think that's potentially a way out of it, to get them to attack each other without straight up killing one another. So then be able to have Luffy find a way to reversey the reversey. I could see that happening. I don't know. I also really like the idea of Loki and Haruden fighting them. I don't know. There's something about the concept of these two brothers that are giants that didn't get along, finally coming together for a bigger cause and taking down these two. Because Dory and Broggy, people always forget, they were locked in combat for a century. They were there in Little Garden fighting each other for all that time. And now suddenly they're back together again. They're not fighting every single second. They're back in Elbaf. Well, now they're Domi Reversi, so I shouldn't say now. But, as of 30 chapters ago, they were just fine. They were buddies again. So I think people always forget about the fact that, they were against each other for so long. And now we're finally in a situation where they're able to, do something and they finally get Domi Reversi'd. It is what it is. But, yeah, man, I think that was awesome. So, all right. Thank you once again. I appreciate that. I'm looking on here right now. Appreciate all of you coming through. I see a lot of you also tuned in as well. I know we just ended the stream. We're at 8,000 people already watched the stream. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. I know it was a little early. I know I was out of town. I know it's a mobile-only stream, so my apologies for things messing up and not being able to do my full setup. And again, probably not going to be the case next week as well, because I will be in Las Vegas for that wedding. But then following next week's chapter, things should be back to normal. I should be able to, do the full chapter live streams and upload them horizontally and everything after that. But again, seems like you guys still enjoyed the chapter and enjoyed the live stream, or happy to hang out with me. So thanks for being here. Hope you all have a lovely rest of your weekend. Like, comment, subscribe. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Nakama! All right, take care, everybody. Take care, everyone. Goodbye. Goodbye.